This is all about, right? So let me tell you a little story about how I first heard Randy Rhoads. I would have been 13 or 14 years old. I was super obsessed with skateboarding, in no small part to the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games, and I was getting into 411 Video Magazine. Anyone who has ever skated knows about 411. It used to come out on a VHS. Maybe every couple of months, the local skate shop would actually stock a 411, and me and my friends would go in turns buying one of them. Now, this particular edition of 411 Video Magazine, I have no recollection of, except for the fact the very last part used the Ozzy Osbourne tribute version of I Don't Know. So you get the epic intro, you have Ozzy running out, and then you have Randy's guitar erupt from all the chaos. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, what is this? That's an awesome guitar sound. This guy's an awesome guitar player. I didn't know Ozzy Osbourne was an awesome rock star. I thought he was just this doddering old man on TV. So yeah, that was a pretty life-changing revelation to hear Randy Rhoads with Ozzy Osbourne. And of course, I had to get the tribute album, which I fell in love with. I used to listen to that on my little knockoff Discman. I'd take turns between that and Thin Lizzy's Live and Dangerous album. I think for maybe 6 months, Tribute was the CD of choice. And I get up to the last guitar solo in Mr. Crowley before I'd have to get out of the car and spend my day drudging away at school. I'd basically spend all day with those songs stuck in my head. Now, when I got around to listening to Blizzard of Oz for the first time, I actually laughed because I thought the guitar sounded absolutely rubbish in comparison to that Tribute Live album. Now, knowing what I know now and speaking to a lot of people who were around when Crazy Train first came out, I appreciate the impact of that song because nothing else would have sounded like it, and really no one else was playing guitar like Randy Rhoads. I guess you had Eddie Van Halen and you probably had other guitar heroes of the 70s, especially if you're in the Northern Americas, of guys like Ronnie Montrose. You might have been aware of players like Frank Marino, Uli Roth, Richie Blackmore. But Randy was doing his own thing. And also, when I looked at that album cover with Ozzy picking Randy up, I just thought it looked absolutely amazing. So that's how I first heard Ozzy Osbourne, and I've been trying to learn tribute for the rest of my life since then, and not doing a very good job of it, as that intro probably demonstrated. So tell me how you first heard Randy Rhoads in the comment section below, and I'll tell you about the gear I'm using. This magnificent beast is a replica of Randy's Sandoval-built V by Perry Ormsby at Ormsby Guitars. This particular one was made by Perry in 2008. Perry was saying basically he had this hanging up in his games room, and I went to borrow some gear, including a really cool old Marshall that you would have heard on the channel. And Perry was like, you should try the V, have some fun with it. So I'm here to have some fun with it. The detail and accuracy on this is pretty wild. Not that I've ever held Randy's original V, but you know, there's all the things you would expect on a great replica on here. He even emulated, or recreated, I should say, the harpoon style headstock on here. This is also just a super comfy guitar to play. I like the feel of the neck. The fretboard feels kind of wide definitely wider and with a flatter radius than a typical Strat, probably just in line with a Gibson style guitar. I'm guessing these two pickups in here are DiMarzio's as well, judging by the kind of slugs in here. Knowing Perry and his attention to detail, that's probably a Super Distortion like Randy had, and I think, what was that, a DiMarzio Path that he had in that guitar? Anyway, I'm running that into the MXR Randy Rhoads Signature Distortion Plus. Again, Perry owns this and was kind enough to let me borrow it. I don't really love the Distortion Plus for what I do, but you could kind of hear on there when I kicked it on top of that amp tone, it adds this layer of crust and filth that really complements the sound coming out of the guitar. And then to finish everything off, I'm using my 1979 Marshall. This started life as a 2959, so a super lead with reverb. I've had it modified by Jason at Headfirst Amps, basically so that when I plug into this low input, I've got a stock super lead, but when I plug into the high input, there's an extra tube gain stage in there. And it is worth noting that Randy's super leads were factory modded, so there was, I think, a mod done so you could get a little bit of extra gain out of the amp by cascading stages together. We'll hear this guitar with the mod on this. It's not the same mod, but I think it's pretty cool. So yeah, I'm running that into a Fractal X load and my free IR as well, because there's absolutely no way that I'd be able to crank this amp up at 10 p.m. at night on a Sunday. All my neighbors would want to come in and murder me. Nevertheless, let's hear some more riffs on this. And I'll just play around with the Distortion Plus. Basically, this kind of setting here doesn't really do anything except dull the chord. That sweet spot for the distortion control seems to be somewhere around noon, and I mostly like it for solos on there. It does thicken everything up. Once you go up past about 2 o'clock on there, you get that kind of buzzsaw fuzz style tone on there. I personally think it's probably a little bit much on its own playing rhythm guitar as well. That sound to me sounds more like just a cranked up plexi, or maybe a plexi boosted with an EQ of some sort on there. I believe Randy did use the Distortion Plus with a, was it a 6-band or a 10-band EQ, probably boosting the mids and cutting some bass, which would make sense. All right, I've gone into the modded channel on this amp now, so the extra tube gain stage. I haven't gone full on with it, but what's cool about that amp is it lets me back off what would otherwise just be the volume control on a normal Marshall, so I can get a bit more of that bright cap action in there. It's just a little bit more aggressive on there. Good for this kind of thing. Descending into madness at the moment. One last thing that I'll do with this rig before I will let you all go is, because I'm running this into a load, I can stack a bunch of effects on in post. So I'm going to put a little bit of Sound Toys micro pitch on here. I know it's not the same thing as a stereo chorus, but with a mono amp source, it should get me pretty close to that kind of stereo chorus that Randy was using. I just added a little bit of delay in post with FabFilter Timeless. Again, I don't think with this setup, I need the pedal for the core rhythm tone on there. I'm just gonna use it maybe with the distortion even higher and on the neck pickup for some lead stuff. And I have run out of parts that I know how to play. So you're gonna hear the Leon Todd B- version of Randy Rhoads taste-alike licks in here. I don't know, stuff like this. What an absolute treat to play through this gear and spend a little bit of time trying to cosplay as one of not only my heroes, but one of the all-time guitar heroes in Randy Rhoads. A massive shout out to Perry at Ormsby Guitars for one, making this awesome instrument, but also loaning me this stuff so that I can try it out and make some noise with it. If you like what I'm doing here on the channel, there's links to support me in the video description. What I'm going to do is just plug this straight into my Axe FX now. I'm going to play through my main preset that I use with Ragdoll. There's a bit of the pitch detune thing going on with this. It's a big, chunky rock guitar sound, and I'm going to chuck a bunch of delay on it and just play you a few Ragdoll riffs for the outro. Thanks so much for watching. Go and pick up your guitars and make some glorious guitar music, and listen to Ozzy Osbourne's tribute album if you get a chance. It is a beautiful thing of a guitar player who was taken before his prime, absolutely reinventing what was possible with the instrument. It's endlessly inspiring.